All right. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Express Lane. This is Jeff Carroll, sci-fi writer, comic book man, dating coach, creator. Just, how about that? Creator. Sci-fi futurist. I call myself a solutionist when I did the Yo Jeff stuff. So, I wanted to just talk about, I guess, mortality, right? Mortality and writing. Probably the best way to discuss it. Mortality and writing in your life. Mortality and writing in your stories. You know, we come to grips with life and death and the aging process. I will say, yeah, age doesn't really matter. You hear people say that all the time. And I'm one of those people that for a long time of my life was looking younger than I normally am. People will be like, oh, you don't really look that age. Get carded every time, you know. I got carded the other day and I thought it was a joke. But, you know, I'm 55 now, right? And age doesn't really matter. I mean, I played basketball with some of my high school students last week, and I still feel it. I'm still sore, right? And a lot of people think, oh, that's, you know, because you're getting old. And it is, but it's also because I ain't played ball in a while. So I'm going to try to catch up with them at the park this week and get myself in better shape. However, it is real, you know. Age is a marker. And I think psychologically, age has an impact on us as well, right? So in my 30s, late 30s, and my 40s, I was a period of time where I couldn't even tell you my exact age. I had lost the just the reference point, you know, of it, and I had forgot about it. I'm not there yet, but I will say that turning 50 does something to you, right? Not only 50 as the age of your body, but 50 as the age in life. You know, I can remember thinking, oh my God, 50 is so old. You know, my father passed away at 67. I think my mother made it to about 72, 73. I gotta look at the obituaries, right? Some people remember all that. I don't really remember it. But my father died the year after his father. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, you know. And I just remember how old my father was, and I was like, I don't want to get old like that. I remember my grandfather, my mother's father, he was 88 when he passed. He was still driving. He was still functioning. He didn't have any ailments, but yet he died in his sleep in my house, maybe 4 months after his last wife had passed away. She had cancer, all right? But he was in, for all intents and purposes, tip-top shape, you know. My father, he died of a mental breakdown with Alzheimer's, you know, and his body was in shape. We never had to take care of him. You know, I never grew up with, you know, people on medication. My grandfather wasn't on no medication. My father wasn't on medication. And these were the men that was around me. But when my mother passed away, she had diabetes, but it was treatable. She didn't have, like, she wasn't on a lot of medication. She watched what she ate and was never sickly like that. However, when it did go up is what took her out, you know, and I think that and a combination of stress, more so stress. For me, that is what I'm concerned with, like health, you know, and I feel like living to the ripe old age. But when you get to the age of like 50, you feel psychologically old. What also happens is younger people become older, right? So my little nephew, I used to take him with me to hang out when he was 7. When I was in college, I was like, you know, 16 when he was born, 15 when he was born, you know. Now he's in his 40s. I'm like, oh, you kidding me, you know. And my little niece, you know, the first nieces and nephews that I had, you know, I'm their godfather, right? So now they're old. And then, you know, I have a son that has a child. And all of this starts to make you feel older, which is not a bad thing. I know when I talk to my kids, right, in my class, they're 17, 18 years old. I'm looking at them and I'm saying, yo, your future is my past. You know, oh, you did so much, Mr. Carroll. Yeah, I lived my life. I'm still living my life, but, you know, I'm not making it up. I had to do stuff. I was 20. I was 19. I was in high school. I was in college. I had a life. You know, I met X and Y people. I went through certain experiences. I lived on Earth during this period of time. So it is what it is, you know. And God bless you to be able to do the same thing. So I'm able to talk from that point. The future. Now I'm looking at older people like, yo, I remember when you was 50. Like my mentor, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and James Small. You know, they're both like late 70s. But I met them 30 years ago when I was 18, 19. I met them in 18, 19 years old. My freshman year in college. And now I've known them, they became my mentors, but now they're older. And I'm like, dang, I remember what they were doing when I met them. Am I that type of person? I remember when people told me, yo, Malcolm X died at whatever age it was. I'm going to say 34, right? You know, you hear those, you know, the saying, only the kings die young. But that also references, you'd be like, damn, I'm older than them. You know, I'm older than what they were doing and what they was able to do. Then you start to think, well, damn, how much time do I got left? Then you got, you know, I live in Florida and people retiring and make you think, oh my God, I can see 10 years, 55, 65, I can see that. I got friends that retired in COVID. You know, I'm chilling, Jeff, and what does retirement mean? I don't have to work, particularly in my career, my field. Now I get to do what I want to do because I finished doing all the things that I needed to do. The kids was grown. You may not feel extremely different, you know, unless you had an illness or you had a, you know, you had an accident or something like that, some other health concern, you know, for, you know, all intents and purposes. I was hit by a car, you know, and I had kidney stones, but I don't have an ongoing illness. I have shoulder pain, but it's from the accident, you know. But for other, you know, other than that, you know, I'm good, you know. And so what makes me feel old is the world around me, the experiences that I have. I also was talking to a buddy. We were talking about, you know, the culture of hip hop. He was a rapper. I was a DJ. You know, in our generation, we all Bismarcks, right? Everybody knew how to rap, little DJing, little breakdancing, and we had graffiti tags. So you had to do everything. It's not like today where you do one thing and that's who you are. And I remember trying to explain this. And again, I'm born in '67. So when I was born, hip hop came shortly thereafter, right? And I grew up in hip hop, and I remember being able to not being able to talk about hip hop and the values, because my father grew up in the pre-hip hop era. Jazz was his thing. He listened to jazz, he listened to salsa, he listened to all of those beats at the time. Even, you know, my mother was in the gospel and R&B, so I'm just giving you the musical thing. But there was a culture that came along with jazz, right? There was a culture that came along with disco, but he was older than disco. His 20s was jazz. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't disco. My aunts and them, they were the immediate generation before me. That was disco, right? And with disco and jazz, it was different with hip hop. But guess what? Hip hop been around 40 years now. So I can talk to my son about the culture of hip hop in a way that I couldn't talk to my father or mother. You understand? Of course, we got Kirk Franklin, and I guess people in the church, they can still go back and have that culture, but I'm not big church only type person. You know, my culture comes from hip hop, if I had to define anything. So my son, you know, he likes certain rappers, but I understand them. You know, it's not foreign to me. There's people that come out now that I like. Hip hop had an impact on R&B. The R&B that he listens to is, my generation created that. So there's a thing that is real cool about that. However, the other thing is, now as an African American, these are changes and shapes in our culture, right? We were stripped of our African culture. So the ability for me to talk to my son and his whole development is real different than the way my parents was able to talk to me, because I understand the culture. We have a cultural connection, right? Even though hip-hop is a subculture, it's still a culture, right? It's more than connection than what I had or what my father made. My father's father and them had Southern culture, but as my father came to New York from Virginia at age 9, it was a big difference culturally. So his father was learning it and he was learning it, but neither one of them had grew up you know, had parents that grew up in the city. So that culture was a cultural shift for them. But for me, my son, now we have, since MTV and BET, all the hip hop is the same nationwide. I would have had a culture shock moving to Miami in the 80s, you know, because they didn't know the same hip hop as me. It was a different scenario, but now we all on the same page. It's ridiculous. And it just makes me think of how it was for Africans prior to being stripped of their culture when they came to the Americas and the Caribbean, right? We would have been able to talk. My wife, her Dominican culture is still generationally connected, probably even Jamaicans. I mean, Jamaica got dance hall and Dominican Republic got reggaeton, and there's a lot of young things going on, but for this, you know, the dances they do are the same dances, you know, whereas my mother and them did the hustle, right? And jazz was a different dance, you know. Hip-hop don't really have any dances now, so we're just a vibe. So it's really interesting. Let me bring this to sci-fi. And I talk too much. My students was like, man, you should make longer videos. I said, have you seen the video? I feel like 15 minutes is enough. But anyway, I think that life experience is currency that is useful in writing science fiction. Science fiction benefits from life experience. It matures you in a way that's important. I think parenting and experiencing another generation is important for people to be adults, whether you have children or not. Being a teacher allows me to do that, but just being an uncle, an aunt, a big brother. You know, we always talk about children needing adult mentors. Well, adults need youth. You know, it puts your life into perspective. You know, I learn a lot from my children, you know. So I don't know. Anyway, I think it just gives, I feel that in effect on my child, on my science fiction writing. And when I start approaching these big questions, I feel like it has had an impact on me as a writer, a thinker, and all those other things that come with being a science fiction writer that you need. So from the shaping of my stories, it's going to benefit from me being of a certain age. So it's really cool. I guess closer to death, you may have a feeling of death, you know, in a different way as well. But I'm not of that thought experience. You know, I don't think in that direction. But anyway, I am out of here. Probably full total eclipse, right? I'm at a funeral for one of my students who passed away a week ago, and we're having a funeral for her. Never had that experience before. You know, it wasn't gun violence, it was not drugs, it was cancer. So anyway, interesting experience. I will just talk to you all later. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, remember, like, subscribe, share, and comment. Peace.